This is Matthew McConaughey,
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson,
Michael Ian Black,
and you are listening to
Five questions.
with Dan Schawbel.
Gillian, welcome to Five Questions.
Hey, thank you for having me.
How was reading and writing an escape for you as a kid?
No, it was a huge and incredibly important escape for me because I was so shy. I mean, painfully, like I felt in my bones, painfully shy. I couldn't speak hardly around unless it was people I already knew. So for me, books were always an escape, and writing became a part of that love. It came out of that love, first of books. I always say to people who want to be writers, like, first you have to read.
Yep.
And I always had a book in my hand. My mom was a reading teacher. She taught literacy for a living. So she was always putting books in my hand no matter what. And I would escape into them and and therefore start writing. And the very first thing I ever wrote was, I still remember it to this day. It came from my love of Little House on the Prairie books. Thank you, Laura Ingalls Wilder. And it was about a little girl. It was also based on the fact that we had a one room hunting cabin in southern Missouri that we spent a lot of time in with no plumbing.
Interesting.
No plumbing. And so you had to go to an outhouse. So the short story was called To the Outhouse, very grandly. And it was about a little pioneer girl who gets a call to nature in the middle of the night, goes to the outhouse, and is surrounded by wolves suddenly and has to decide, how she's going to get back to her family and churn some more butter in the morning or whatever. And she was very plucky and can do. And at the end, she bursts out of the outhouse and then is immediately devoured alive by all the wolves. The end.
Oh, no. Yeah. Tough ending there.
I was already writing dark. I was like, I already had kind of creepy endings even back in third grade, but it's good to get it out.
What are some of the unique challenges of writing a movie script compared to a book?
Oh boy. And I've been going back and forth very recently, actually, as I struggle with this new book to mold it into some sort of shape that looks like a book. And also doing screenplays, and I was lecturing a friend, which is normally what I do when I'm trying to lecture myself, is sort of like, you got to understand, remember this, which is always that just because you're writing doesn't mean that they're not two very different types of writing. And, so for me, I'm able to get in and out of a screenplay more quickly, because you're kind of writing in set moments. And so part of that is the strange discipline of being able to say, I'm literally trying to do a lot. How much can I fit into one page of writing in a screenplay? And, books, you can really, obviously you can get in the character's head. In the film, you have to figure out how to portray that. How do I get this? Certainly when I was adapting Gone Girl, those were two incredibly different, I realized, disciplines, because Gone Girl is so internal, right? It's about the characters' thoughts and attitudes and how they feel about each other and what they're thinking about doing to each other. And it was, how do I get that on the screen without someone just saying, like, this is what I'm going to do to you, Nick, just so you know. And so to me, it's fun because the screenplays get very visual. You're sort of like, what am I going to be looking at? And books can get, that's why books are so much longer, because you can have that luxury of describing a room to the nth and describing the smell that's there, describing, every little piece about it. But it's also why it's more enervating at the end of the day, because you've lived all these kind of different lives very intimately. So they're both very cool. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's always very interesting when, the books are adapted to movies. Some audience members who read the books are like, why isn't it like word for word, like appearing on the screen? And it's for everything you just said. It's because not everything can work. And you have to make it work for people to be invested in the movie too. And a lot of people who didn't read the book are going to see the movie. So it could be a slightly different audience as well, or a more broad audience.
I totally agree. Don't you think? And I do that. I'll if you get really invested in a book and really love it, you're probably never going to love the movie if you want it to be that exact same thing. I'm always kind of like, they're like slightly complementary bookends to each other. They're not supposed to be though exactly the same, because then I've seen, detail by detail perfectly rendered from book to movie almost, and they don't work. It's like, I appreciate your devotion to this original material. Like when I was doing Sharp Objects at HBO in the writer's room, and everyone was very kind to me and sort of like, well, let's, but that's not in the book. That's, I said, the first thing we have to do is just take the beats from the book, and then please ignore the book. Like, don't, let's really rewrite it and make it into a TV series, because, we can't do it otherwise. And I mean, do you have a favorite book to film adaptation?
Well, I think what I was going to say that I think is really interesting is the Harry Potter films. Like, I didn't read the book, but the movie was good, and people who read the book were always like frustrated, or why can't be like more of the book. So I think the big test is when they put out the series season by season to reflect each book, like not word for word, but like pretty precisely, like, are people going to like the originals better, or are they going to like the ones that are much more identical and cover the whole book, each book? That's the test.
It's an interesting test. I would say, I would think that to me, two of the three greatest book to film would be Rosemary's Baby, which actually is almost written like a screenplay, a beautiful, perfect screenplay. So I'm not putting it down, but almost everything that's in that book you will see in the movie. Jaws, which they were smart enough to tear off the first half of, which is a really cool John Updike angst in the suburbs sort of story. But obviously they said, like, let's just make it human against shark. And I love Talented Mr. Ripley. I think that is a really all-time great one.
For sure. And how did your experience writing these novels make you want to start your own book imprint?
For me, I mean, partly it's because the industry has changed so much. And I don't know that I'd have a career if I were trying to break in right now. It's just harder and harder. There's this kind of a places want you to already have a platform, but how do you have a platform if you don't have the product? So it becomes this way of keeping you out almost instead of getting you in. And isn't that what we're all supposed to be about, is getting voices in, not shutting them out? And it's that way across any sort of content right now, that it really is sort of, well, what do you already have? Do you have 100,000 followers on Twitter or on Insta? And I can tell you, number one, that does not translate into people are going to go buy your book. Like, just because people want to read 10 words from you a day doesn't mean they're going to grab a book from you. It's just not true. But that sort of idea of like, you have to already prove yourself until, we start looking at your stuff, I find is very damaging, and I don't like it. I mean,
it's almost like sports.
Yes. I mean, it is. It really is, well, what's your brand? Why should I have to have a brand to be a good writer? I understand why it's happening, but it does worry me. And I'm one of those people, like, the more voices, the merrier. Again, because growing up, I learned so much about how humans work through books, and how people that were different from me thought about the world. And that's where you gain empathy and understanding, all these really important things. So this was kind of an idea of being able to get those voices in that may not fit an exact genre, an exact quick 6 words, here's what my book's about type vibe, and really kind of respect all these different voices that are out there. And I'm all about the quirky and the weird, and I love being able to, people are like, what book would you recommend? And me saying a book and then going, I don't want to explain it to you though, because it's so weird. Like, you need to just read it. Like, I love the phrase, like, you just need to read it, because that to me is something that can't be encapsulated really easily.
I mean, it comes down to word of mouth. If people really like the book, they'll tell one or more friends, and then they'll tell one or more friends, and then it kind of gets spread like that. And even publishers that will give massive book advances to, people with famous last names or just people in general who are famous, that doesn't mean they're going to get a good ROI. If they give you multi-million-dollar advance, your book could still flop if it's not a good book or it's not timed well or for various other reasons. Like there could be issues with distribution or who knows what. So there's no slam dunk even at those kind of higher levels. Just because you have a platform doesn't guarantee anything. There's nothing guaranteed and it costs more to sign the people who have the larger platforms.
Yeah. And I mean, and exactly, just because you can say this book sold this amount of copies doesn't necessarily mean also that another book that's like this book is going to sell great for you. And that to me is also a trap too.
Yeah, I was asked for I think it was the last book before I did my own thing, my own book with a different publisher. Can you write the Give and Take by Adam Grant for young people? And I'm like, I don't want to like be a derivative of Adam Grant, like that was his thing. This sold a lot, so maybe if you write it, we can sell a percentage of what that was sold or whatever, however they do the math.
Yeah. Oh no.
It kind of leads into my next question about making a book successful now, compared to when you first started out. What do you think kind of led to your success, and what would you have had to change different now versus when you first started?
I think what led to my success is just, like I said, being willing to write a book that didn't entirely fit what was expected. I mean, if you look at Gone Girl, no one actually thought that would be a hit. I mean, truly, we hoped it would do better than the last one, which was it was my third book. We hoped to do, a little bit better than the first and the second, and like she'll kind of grow an audience.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, I mean, it's a whodunit where you find out who done it right in the middle. It's told by two not likable narrators, and it doesn't end, with a totally precise little button all wrapped up. And so I think that is one thing I would also advise to people is like, write what is feeling correct. Don't write after what you think is going to sell or what you think is people are going to want. I think that's really dangerous. I think, what I can credit any success for is just wanting to have my own voice, and why else write? I mean, it always boils back down to that. Like, why are you writing? I will totally admit right now I'm in a mild existential crisis trying to finish this next book, which has this big weight on it, at least for me, because it's like, oh, it's the first book since Gone Girl. Like, it's got to do this.
Oh my God, the stress.
Oh, it's like
the expectations.
Too much like it can't be too much like Gone Girl. It can't be not enough like Gone Girl. What am I doing? And I have these.
That's the success problem.
And I hate to say like, woe is me, but I just these moments of kind of panic / dread, to be honest. And then it comes back down to, well, why do you write? Like, am I really writing to try to be better than Gone Girl was? Well, what does that even mean? Like, what, do I need to sell more? No, do I need to, what do I need to do? And it's like, no, like, it always goes down to like it's painful. It sucks to be a writer a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's lonely.
It's lonely and it's frustrating. And, so you have to go down to like, why am I suffering? Why am I making myself suffer like this? And, the answer becomes very simple at that point. You just have to remember it. It's like, because ultimately it's what you love doing.
Absolutely. And what's your best piece of career advice?
My best piece of career advice would really be to stick to that principle, to remember why you're writing, why you're creating something, what it is that is, giving you that fire in the belly. Because if you don't really have that, and you're just trying to chase these illusions of what you think you're supposed to be doing, I mean, even if you're successful, you're still probably going to be feeling a little bit hollow. And I think your work is going to be one of the things that's not ultimately remembered that much. Just because something is consumed doesn't mean that people will think about it 10 years from now, or even think about it 10 weeks from now? I always say I would much rather people hate my books. And I have I've had people come up to me and like, God, girls, I hated it. And I'm always,
That's weird.
oh my God.
You assume they just stay on Amazon and give you a bad review. It's got to be awkward to see them in person, though.
Oh, I've seen him in person. No, we will wait in line at a book signing and be like, I'm just here because my book club decided to come. I hated this book. And I love that. I say, well, why? Tell me why. Oh, let's dig into this. And I would much rather have that reaction than someone go, I liked it, and never think about it again. Because if you hate something with that much passion, you've talked about it and you've thought about it, and it's become part of some sort of fabric of at least a week of your life. That's what I want. I would much rather have that sensation than just the kind of glide through, and if even if it sells well or is well viewed, but still doesn't make people want to like get into it and talk about it, it's not as interesting for me.
Yeah,
So,
I was thinking about it. It's like, write the book and think about how you're going to feel and behave during those interviews when you get asked about it. And if you're not going to feel like excited to talk about it, then why are you doing it in the first place? It goes back to your idea of like, have a purpose and intent behind your work.
I like that. That is so true. Like, do you have something? Are you going to be sitting there just trying to sell something? Or are you actually going to be talking about something that you want to get into?
Exactly. Well, that's great advice. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.